The weight of my graduation cap felt heavier than it should have. Maybe it was the expectations, my parents' beaming faces in the third row, my professors' approving nods as I passed them in the hallway before the ceremony, or the knowledge that in exactly 47 minutes, according to the program gripped tightly in my sweating palms, I would officially be a college graduate. Boston University's Agganis Arena hummed with anticipation. 2,000 graduates in identical black robes, yet each of us carried different stories, different debts, different dreams. Mine had been simple. Get the degree, make my immigrant parents proud, secure the marketing job I'd already been promised at Latitude Agency downtown. A neat, linear progression. Emma Thompson, you need to fix your tassel. My roommate Mackenzie appeared beside me, reaching up to adjust the golden strand hanging from my cap. Left side means you haven't graduated yet. Right side is after. Thanks, I mumbled, though I'd known this. I'd been overthinking everything lately. Nervous about the speech? She asked, straightening her own cap. I nodded. Being selected as the student speaker had been unexpected. My GPA was strong but not exceptional. I wasn't a student body president or the founder of some revolutionary campus initiative. I was just Emma, reliable, hardworking, invisible enough, until Dean Harrison had called me into his office 3 weeks ago. Your essay on community resilience was powerful, he'd said. It resonated with the committee. We'd like you to speak at commencement. The arena lights dimmed. President Whitmore approached the podium, his voice booming through the speakers. I barely heard his words over the pounding in my ears. Row by row, students stood and proceeded toward the stage. Names were called, cheers erupted, handshakes, photos, a well-choreographed assembly line of achievement. My row stood. 20 people ahead of me. 15, 10, 5. I clutched the folded pages of my speech in my left hand. 3 months of drafting and redrafting. Words about perseverance, gratitude, and looking forward. Safe words, expected words. Emma Thompson. I stepped onto the stage, the lights momentarily blinding me. Dean Harrison's handshake was firm. Congratulations, he said, passing me my diploma holder. The actual degree would come in the mail. Weeks later. As I turned to face the photographer, something fluttered from inside the diploma cover. A small folded note that shouldn't have been there. I caught it reflexively, my smile fixed for the camera flash. Walking across the stage on autopilot, I discreetly unfolded the note. I know what happened sophomore year. I know it was you. Everyone will too. My blood turned to ice. The stadium seemed to tilt beneath my feet as I stumbled back to my seat. The rows of identical black caps blurred before me. Sophomore year. A night I'd spent 2 years trying to forget. A night that could destroy everything I'd built. An hour later, I stood at the podium, my prepared speech forgotten in my pocket. The note burned in my hand as 2,000 fellow graduates and their families stared back at me. My parents' proud faces in the crowd. The job offer waiting for Monday morning. Thank you, Dean Harrison, I began, my voice surprisingly steady. Fellow graduates, distinguished faculty, family, and friends. I paused, looking down at the small piece of paper that threatened to unravel my carefully constructed life. Then I made a decision. I had a speech prepared about our bright futures and the lessons we've learned here. But standing here now, I realize there's a more important truth I need to share. The audience leaned forward, collective curiosity rippling through the arena. I took a deep breath and started telling the truth about sophomore year, about the night that changed everything, about the secret I'd been carrying, and about how sometimes our greatest mistakes lead to our most important growth. Sophomore year. The mere thought of it made my throat tighten as I stood at the podium. 2 years ago, I had been a different person, desperate to fit in, to prove I belonged at an elite university where many of my classmates came from privilege I couldn't comprehend. What few people know, I continued, my voice echoing across the now silent auditorium, is that during my sophomore year, I almost lost everything I'd worked for From the faculty section, I saw Dean Harrison shift uncomfortably. President Whitmore's smile had frozen. In the family section, my father leaned toward my mother, confusion creasing his brow. I was working 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load. The pressure was crushing me. Then came the statistics final, a make-or-break exam for my scholarship. The memory flooded back with painful clarity. The library at 3 a.m., my vision blurring from exhaustion, panic rising as formulas refused to stick in my sleep-deprived mind. Professor Winters had left his office door unlocked, the exam key visible, on his desk through the crack in the door. The moment of weakness when I'd stepped inside. "I was caught in Professor Winters' office after hours," I said, my voice dropping. I'd gone there intending to look at an advance copy of the final exam. Gasps rippled through the audience. My parents' faces fell. This wasn't what anyone expected, to hear from the student commencement speaker. "But I didn't do it," I continued. I stood in that office for exactly 47 seconds before walking out, empty-handed. I chose integrity over desperation. What I didn't know was that someone saw me enter that office, someone who's apparently been waiting 2 years to use that information against me. I held up the note for everyone to see. This was slipped into my diploma cover today. I know what happened sophomore year. I know it was you. Everyone will too. The silence in the arena was deafening. Every face stared back at me. Some shocked, others confused, a few nodding in understanding. Whoever wrote this note wanted to shame me today. They wanted to expose what they believed was my darkest secret. But here's the truth. My darkest moment wasn't entering that office. It was allowing myself to reach that breaking point of desperation in the first place. From the corner of my eye, I spotted Professor Winters in the faculty section. His expression was unreadable. What the note writer doesn't know is what happened after. Professor Winters caught me leaving his office. Instead of reporting me immediately, he asked me one question. "What do you need?" I paused, the memory of that conversation, still raw, how I'd broken down in his office, admitting how overwhelmed I was, how I felt like an imposter among classmates who didn't need to work multiple jobs to stay afloat. That conversation changed everything. Professor Winters connected me with resources I didn't know existed, emergency financial aid, counseling services, study groups. He could have ended my academic career, but instead, he showed me compassion. My eyes found Professor Winters again. He gave me a slight nod, permission to continue. The next morning, I went to Dean Harrison's office and reported myself. I was placed on academic probation. I lost one of my campus jobs. I had to take an ethics seminar that met at 7 a.m. every Friday for a semester. I looked directly at my parents now. Their expressions had shifted from disappointment to something else, concern, perhaps understanding. The system held me accountable, but it also supported me. That's the part of the story this note writer doesn't know, or chose to ignore. The auditorium remained silent. 2,000 breaths held collectively. So yes, I almost made a terrible mistake sophomore year. And yes, someone saw me in that moment of weakness. But that moment doesn't define me. What came after does. I folded the note carefully and slipped it into my pocket. I'm standing here today not despite that experience, but because of it. I learned that integrity isn't about never failing. It's about how you respond when you're at your lowest. I learned that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the courage to ask for help when you need it most. As I spoke these words, I scanned the crowd, wondering if I could spot the note writer's face. Was it satisfaction I'd see? Disappointment that their plan had backfired? Or maybe, just maybe, recognition of a shared humanity. The understanding that we've all stood at similar crossroads. To whoever wrote this note, I said, my voice stronger now. Thank you. You reminded me of how far I've come, And you've given me the opportunity to share a more honest message with my fellow graduates than I had originally planned. I turned to face my classmates directly. Class of 2025, the diplomas we receive today don't represent perfect journeys. They represent resilience. They represent the times we fell and got back up. They represent the people who believed in us when we couldn't believe in ourselves. For the first time since I'd begun speaking, I heard murmurs of agreement, saw nodding heads. So as we leave here today, let's not pretend we've never struggled or failed. Instead, let's carry forward the most important lesson this university has taught us, that our lowest moments can become our greatest teachers if we have the courage to learn from them. As I stepped away from the podium, the silence lingered for 3 heartbeats before the applause began. It started slowly, a few hesitant claps, then built into something thunderous. I didn't know if they were applauding my honesty or simply relieved the uncomfortable moment had passed. Either way, I walked back to my seat with my spine straight, despite the trembling in my legs. President Whitmore returned to the microphone, his expression a careful neutral as he transitioned to the next part of the ceremony. I barely heard him over the rushing in my ears. "Are you insane?" Mackenzie whispered as I slid back into my seat beside her. "That wasn't the speech you showed me yesterday." "Someone knows," I murmured, showing her the note. I couldn't let them have that power over me. She read it, her eyes widening. "Do you know who wrote it?" I shook my head, scanning the sea of identical black caps. It could be anyone. A classmate who happened to see me that night. Someone who'd heard rumors, perhaps even a student worker from the administration office who'd accessed my disciplinary record. The remainder of the ceremony passed in a blur. We moved our tassels from left to right. We tossed our caps into the air, a momentary constellation of black squares against the arena ceiling. And then it was over. 4 years culminating in a 3-hour ceremony and a moment of raw honesty I hadn't planned. Outside, families clustered in celebratory groups, flowers exchanged, photos taken. I spotted my parents standing apart from the crowd, my mother clutching a bouquet of yellow roses, my favorite. Their expressions were difficult to read. "Emma." My father spoke first when I approached, his accent thicker than usual, as it always was when he was emotional. "Your speech." "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I know it wasn't what you expected. I should have told you about sophomore year, but I was ashamed. And then it seemed too late, and—" My mother placed the roses in my arms and cut off my rambling with a tight hug. "We are proud of you," she said firmly. "Not because you are perfect, because you are honest and brave. But what I almost did, almost, my father emphasized, and then you made it right. This is what matters." Over my mother's shoulder, I spotted Professor Winters making his way through the crowd toward us. My stomach tightened. "Ms. Thompson," he said, extending his hand. That was quite a speech. "I hope I didn't misrepresent what happened," I said, suddenly worried I'd dragged him into my personal drama without permission. He shook his head. "You were remarkably accurate, actually, though I recall giving you quite a stern lecture before connecting you with those resources." A small smile softened his usually serious face. "I've used your case as an anonymous example in my ethics discussions with graduate assistants. The importance of recognizing when a student is struggling rather than simply punishing them." "Thank you," I said, meaning it for far more than just his words today. As Professor Winters walked away, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find Dean Harrison standing there, his expression unreadable. "Dean Harrison, He raised a hand to stop me. "Walk with me a moment, Ms. Thompson." I handed the roses to my mother and followed him a short distance away from the crowds. "That was not the speech we approved," he said, his tone measured. "No, sir. I'm sorry for the surprise." He was quiet for a moment, watching the celebration around us. "When we selected you as student speaker, It was because your essay demonstrated unusual insight into the real challenges students face. I see now that insight came from personal experience. I waited, unsure where this was going. The university prides itself on producing graduates of both intelligence and character, he continued. Today, you demonstrated both. Relief flooded through me. Thank you, sir. However, he added, I would appreciate advance notice if you plan to make any similarly revealing statements at alumni events. A small laugh escaped me, my first genuine one of the day. I think I've shared enough secrets for now. As Dean Harrison walked away, my phone buzzed with a text notification, an unknown number. That wasn't how I expected you to respond to my note. Brave move, Thompson. Coffee tomorrow? We should talk. Jay. I stared at the message, my mind racing through every J name I knew, trying to place who might have written the note. Jason from statistics, Jennifer from the library, Jared from student government. Before I could decide how to respond, another text came through. P.S. Check your email. Latitude Agency might want to reconsider their offer after today's performance. My heart sank. The marketing job, my neat linear future, potentially jeopardized by my moment of honesty. I quickly pulled up my email, bracing for bad news. There it was, an email from Caroline West, creative director at Latitude, sent just 20 minutes ago. Emma, just watched a live stream of your commencement speech. We need to talk. Call me this evening. The brief message revealed nothing about her reaction. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, uncertainty churning in my stomach. Everything okay? My father had approached, concern etched across his face. I nodded, not wanting to worry him with this new development. Just graduation messages. We have reservations at Giacomo's, he said, checking his watch. Your favorite pasta place, remember? From when you first visited the campus? 4 years ago, we'd celebrated my acceptance letter there. My parents splurging on a meal that I knew stretched their budget, because they believed in my future. I remember, I said, linking my arm through his as we walked back to join my mother. Whatever happened with Latitude Agency, whatever fallout came from my speech, whatever confrontation awaited me with the mysterious J, those were tomorrow's problems. Today, I had told my truth. I had refused to be shamed. I had graduated. As we walked toward the restaurant, the late afternoon sun warm on our backs, I realized the weight I'd been carrying wasn't just the graduation cap or the expectations. It was the secret itself. The fear of being exposed, of being seen at my worst moment. Now that weight was gone, replaced by something lighter, but no less substantial. The responsibility of moving forward with authenticity. You know, my mother said as we walked. In our village, there is saying, truth is heavy. That's why so few people carry it. I smiled at her wisdom, as I had so many times before. I'm glad I finally picked it up then. The future I'd planned might be altered now, the neat linear progression disrupted. But as we entered the restaurant, surrounded by the warm scents of garlic and basil, I found I wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever came next, I would face it honestly. Not perfect, but whole.